Hey everyone, today I am going to be talking about this story from fortune.com. This is your favorite black single mom, Samantha, the millennial introvert, and let's just jump right into this story. So, this was released April 26, 2024, and it says, the economy is moving us back into the 19th century as fertility rates plunge. So the economy is hitting younger generations hard. Millennials and Gen Zers face sky-high mortgage rates, soaring home prices and inflation, and is slowing some traditional or otherwise historic milestones like having a child. Indeed, women are starting families later and having fewer children, with some forgoing starting a family altogether, according to a report released Thursday by the National Center for Health Statistics within the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. First, I want to say, because people cannot afford to have kids, is that a reason to bash black single mothers? Like, it's giving jealousy. Because I'm just like, all these people who are quote unquote childless that are popping up everywhere, right? We know the childless rates, people not having kids, are rising. And so the correlation that I'm getting here is that the people who are bashing people for having children and leaving their partners for whatever reason, because we can do that. Like, why are we getting bashed and bullied and shamed? Why are you worrying about other grown people? But it's funny. The irony is that they claim that black single mothers are worrying about them and their childlessness, but we're not. We don't care. And so I feel like there's some jealousy going on there because black single moms had their babies anyway, and some of us have more than one child, and we're somehow making it work. We're paying our bills and taking care of our children. And I think that that hatred is coming from a place of envy. So let me continue. So it says here that there's the most staggering statistic in the report is that the U.S. total fertility rate hit a record low in 2023, falling to 1.62 births per woman. That's well below the quote unquote replacement rate. So in case you all don't know what a replacement rate is, it's basically saying that women are supposed to have at least 2 children to replace her and the man she's having a child with, right? And the replacement rate is not really super necessary because a lot of times people are having kids with other people. So it's not like back in the day where it was like, oh, you're married and you're just having children with this one guy. Now it's like women are having a child with one guy, and then she may go have a child with another guy, and then that guy may have a children already by other women. So it's not really very accurate as far as like ensuring that the population is going to be replaced. Secondly, this comes behind people claiming that there's this overpopulation. And one, overpopulation is not a thing because people die. So you're basically acting like everyone's going to live forever and we're just going to keep adding humans to the planet, which is extremely stupid. A stupid thought. But also the fact that people are not replacing themselves, that would also mean that population will be declining overall. I mean, look at Korea right now. They are in danger of completely disappearing off the face of the earth because they're not having enough children to quote unquote replace themselves. And so there's like this natural selection of who's going to be on the planet, who's not, and people that are not having, not even replacing themselves, then that means when they die off, there is no replacement, which would ordinarily be your children, then your grandchildren, so on and so forth. So let's continue. So they said as well. So they said the replacement rate is not happening. The number of births needed to meet the number of older generations is 2.1 births. And honestly, also, it's not really surprising that the replacement rate isn't happening because The baby boomers were actually a very large generation that occurred because of like wartime and things of that nature. So it wasn't normal. It wasn't typical to have as many babies as were born that during that time period. That's why they're called the baby boomers, because it was like this booming rate of babies that were being born. And so this is not really very alarming or even surprising that people are cutting back on how many babies that we're having, because one, that many children are not necessary. Like back in the day when they had farms and all of that, they needed to have more kids. The mortality rate of infants has declined, so people don't have to have a lot of kids worrying that their kids are not going to make it past their first birthday. Thirdly, there's nothing going on like wartime or anything where people are coming back and then just having all this, schmecks or whatever. So all of those factors are showing that things are happening as they should be happening, essentially. And then, of course, as the first paragraph went right into to say, which this is coming from fortune.com, so of course they're going to be talking about the economy, is that the economy is not conducive to having children or even having a lot of children. Daycare, we all know daycare is too damn expensive. Housing is too expensive. College is too expensive. Everything's too expensive. And the wages, the salaries are just stagnant. I remember I realized this about 10, 15 years ago, once I left my parents' house and was living in the real world, that everything had gone up except the salaries. I was thinking back and I was realizing, like, I think I'm making like the same amount my parents made 20 years ago. And I remember my mother, my boomer mom, telling me, like, why aren't you buying a house, blah, blah, blah. And she, I guess, was not following the economy. So she had no clue that, like the salary was not matching the price of the homes. And people seem to not really be able to wrap their head around the fact that if you want your house to appreciate and you're loving all this appreciation, then that means that the younger generations are going to be eating that cost. So when we get old enough to go buy homes, your same raggedy house that you bought 20 years ago is older, but yet is going to be quote unquote worth more for whatever reason. And now is like 3 times the amount that the older generations paid. And so it's really, and that would be, one, it's already a tragedy because it's like the house is older. Why am I paying so much more for an older house? That just really logically does not even make any sense. But two, the reason, like, it's not even like our wages and salaries matching it. So it's like, can I at least be making 3 times the amount my parents made so that I can afford this expensive ass house? So anyways, let me continue. So for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. Yeah, because the wages and salary is not matching. The math isn't mathing. Salaries are not going up. They're not increasing, but everything else is, the cost of living is. So Scott Galloway, a professor at New York University Stern School of Business, said that is the social compact breaking down. He says this in a recent interview with Morning Joe. Only 27% of adults ages 30 to 34 have one child, he said. But in 1990, that percentage was 60%. But it's really interesting. I have to look at the data again, but they were saying that by the age of 50, 90% of people will have at least one child. They will have children. So we'll go deal with that, talk about that later. So people are opting out of America, Galloway said. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids. Indeed, the National Center for Health Statistics report showed that birth rates declined for women aged 15 through 39. And not only are they not having kids, but they're bashing people for having them. It's like, I'm angry because I can't have the American dream, or I can't have kids, so now I'm going to take it out on people who are having the supposed American dream and or having kids. Which is like, why are you worrying about what other people are doing? Just worry about your own life and get your stuff in order. Overall, there were about 3.59 million births in the U.S. in 2023. down 2% from 2022, according to the report. What's more, birth rates are declining at an even faster rate for minority women. General fertility declined 5% for Black women, as well as American Indian and Alaska Native women, and 3% for Asian women, according to the report. So when they say general fertility is declining, you have to wonder, what are they comparing it to? So like I said earlier, they're comparing it to, I'm assuming, previous birth rates, which again, why are people having so many children nowadays? It's not necessary. Most of us are not farmers, and having the kids work the farms. And then we also aren't coming from wars and just having all this schmecks where we're just basically having this baby boom. Again, it's not necessary. It's not plausible. Why would that be happening? And we don't have a life in America that's conducive to having a family. America in no way, shape, or form supports families, family planning. The males are not conditioned to be good husbands, or even good fathers. Sometimes they're good dads, but they're not good husbands. And so we had to do better to raise better men. And then, the women are opting out because overall we have to get jobs. We have to work outside the home. We have to help pay the bills. We have to go 50-50 with our partners, versus back in the day when women were allowed to stay home, which I don't think really happened much in the Black community, but overall other races were allowed to that luxury. And now that it's just out the window, it's like everyone has to be outside the house working. And that kind of makes you think twice about bringing children into a world if you feel like you won't even be able to be home to see them or to raise them properly. And now strangers are raising your kids and influencing your children. So what would be the point of having kids? So the government is not doing a great job. State, local, federal are not doing a great job of supporting families. And instead of them being intelligent and using common sense to fix these issues, they decide they're going to strong arm women into having babies. And what you're going to see more is just a lot of babies that are unalived. You're going to see babies being abused. You're going to be seeing babies being put up for adoption. Women that don't want to have children or can't have these children that the states are forcing them to have, and that the government is sitting back allowing to happen, allowing these states to make these awful laws like they typically do. They're going to essentially be paying the price, and these women are going to walk away from motherhood one way or the other. Whether it also will probably raise the mortality rate of these women as they go underground to get these abortions. And so there's a lot of backlash that's going to happen from how the government once more is behaving. And our American government, because they're so obsessed with greed, they refuse to see what the real issues are and to have any kind of common sense. And the crazy thing is that other westernized countries that are in par, up to par with America as far as like the GDP and success and whatever, development, so on and so forth, they are showing that their populations are happier. They are using more social programs to support their populations, because you want these populations, these people to keep, your citizens, to keep having children and doing the hard work of raising them, but you don't want to support them in any way, shape, or form. But yet you're crying because now your economy is collapsing because there's no one to buy all your consumer goods or your services and your products, and then you're crying because your economy is going to collapse. And it's like, what are you doing? You also don't have anyone to go working in your companies to make you richer. So, or anyone to go fight in your wars to make you richer and to defend the country. So what is the government doing to support people who sign up, to raise children, which is not easy? You're doing it for 18 years. People are a-holes about it. A lot of people don't support parents, especially if you're a single mother. And it's like, what is the government doing? Where is the incentive for anyone to sign up for this? I see so many women on a daily basis cry and whine about they don't want to be a single mom. They don't want to do things that's going to make them a single mother, like it's a death sentence, like they're going to die off because they had a child. And that is the government doing. That's the religion under the government's doing. People came to America to practice whatever religion we want to practice, but somehow we've all been indoctrinated through Christianity. And so people are creating this weird narrative about having to be married to have kids, and that is all man-made doing. So now you created this life where women are afraid to create their own child and make their own decisions. Males are running off being deadbeats and getting women pregnant willy-nilly and creating single mothers everywhere, and then turning around and sitting on podcasts and bashing these same women for getting pregnant by them. And they're coming up with everything under the sun to try to explain why these women should have kept their legs closed or not had kids with them, when really it was on them it was partly and mainly, I would say, on the males, because usually you're the ones that are sticking your peen in the woman. Women do not ordinarily grape males and really don't have the capacity to, because if guys don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. So, males are usually the ones graping or running and being so pressed on schmecks. So to sit around and cry and moan everybody a river is really disingenuous. It's like you did the most to lay down with this woman, and schmecks is to create babies, even though I guess everyone missed sex ed class. So nobody knows that is why you're having schmecks, is to procreate and create humans. So males need to keep it in their pants and get vasectomies and, or wear a condom. I even heard someone talk about a pull-out method. Like, that's extremely irresponsible still. That's not going to cut it. And then for males to sit around and expect women to be on birth control and carry all the weight and onus on her, like, oh, she had to do this, she should have kept her legs closed, so because she opened her legs, you had to fall into it. Yeah, that makes sense. Apparently you just have no control like an animal, and you have to hump everything that moves. So that doesn't make any sense. So again, males are just constantly acting like children and, being allowed to be boys will be boys, like they're never going to grow up. And that would be cute if you weren't creating entire human beings that you have to keep alive. And so I'll say time and time again that I do feel like when males abandon their children, they should be in prison for it, because that is parent neglect. You should not be allowed to create a human being and just abandon it. You should sit yourself there, whether you're with their mom or not, and take care of your child. Because a lot of times the mothers don't want to be with these males because they're not conditioned to be good husbands. They're not conditioned to be good partners. They are very emotional and unhinged, and nobody wants to live with that. Nobody has to live with that. Nobody should have to live with that unless we're living in, in servitude and slavery all over again. And so we need to #raise better men and not allow boys and men to just run amok, unfettered, unbothered, unaccountable for the crazy that they are creating in their communities. And then you're just putting the burden on the parent that stayed and is taking care of the children. And I've seen so many people, especially from females who, and these are not women to me, but they're females who will sit there and just put all this anger and vitriol on Black single mothers and single moms and be like, oh, well, you should have did this, you should have did that. And it's like, no. And they get mad when people actually support single mothers. So it tells me a lot more about them than it does about single moms, and that there's something bigger going on there. Like, someone is angry and having some internalized misogyny and hate that single moms don't have anything to do with that. It's like, that's something you need to go to therapy and get that worked out. And so I see people just getting really upset with single mothers, and with the parents who stayed, with the parents who are taking accountability for our actions. We laid down and we know what we did, and whether it was an accident or we weren't expecting it, or we wanted a baby and we were trying for this child, whatever the reason is, the bottom line is that the single moms are doing their jobs and raising their children. And it may not always be easy. It may not always look perfect, because we're human and it's not going to be perfect. But the bottom line is we're trying our best, and we're doing a lot better than the males who ran off into Never Never Land and are completely unbothered and being held to no accountability for what they're doing. They're able to come to the family cookouts and go call their mama and hang out with their friends and, date different random females and just do whatever they want to do and lie on podcasts and pretend we don't have any kids when they have like 50, like frickin' frack, and they're having all these babies everywhere. But as long as they run off before, the lady has a child, they can pretend like, oh, I didn't know she had a kid, so I don't have any kids. And they can continue to lie to themselves, because what do males do? They lie. And so this is a problem, and this is what's going to continue to happen with the decline of this country, is Black single mothers and single mothers in general just carrying the weight on our shoulders of raising children and males not being held accountable. Another thing I think needs to be happening is males need to be getting a blood test for paternity when they have a child with a woman, and the biological father is the one that who should actually go on the birth certificate. It doesn't make sense that is called a birth certificate and you're just putting whomever you want on there. If the person who didn't help create that child biologically is not on that birth certificate, then just call it something else, because that doesn't make sense. And I feel like this happens once more for the government so that they don't have to keep track of males. They don't have to hold them accountable. This was maybe you can pretend was an excuse back in the day, but even back then you should have still been requiring people to have the biological father sign the paternity test, and the paternity test and the birth certificate. And I don't know why you would put someone's husband at that time or whatever, just randomly putting people on the birth certificate if that wasn't the actual biological child's father, unless the wife lied and is like, oh, that's my child's father, knowing that she cheated on him or whatever. Then that's another story. But nowadays we don't have that excuse. We have the science, we have the technology, and all children should have their biological parents on their birth certificate so that we can actually have real data to calculate who's having these children with who, and males should be held accountable. So if you had a child with someone, you cannot run around on your podcast or anywhere else and pretend like, oh, I don't have any kids, when you have all kinds of kids out there. And this should help males take some accountability and get these vasectomies when you realize you have like 10 kids by 10 different women. And that should be a requirement as well. Just like they're controlling women's bodies and telling us that we have to get abortions, or we're banning abortions, then, or guys are telling us to get abortions, if it's still legal. We should be telling males when they cap out, the system should say, okay, this particular male has 5 kids by 5 different women, or 3 kids by, out there, especially if he's not taking care of them, then part of the penalty should be you're going to prison and you're also getting a vasectomy. You're no longer going to be allowed to have any more children irresponsibly that you're not going to take care of, because you're not already taking care of your other kids. And so that should cut down on males picking and choosing which children they want to take care of. So it's like, oh, I'm having kids with these other women, and then I get to run off, and these kids are without a father. But then when I feel like growing up and getting myself together, now I can marry who I want to marry and have a whole family with them down the street. No, we're not doing that anymore. You need to end that. And that's what women should be pushing for as well. On top of them looking crazy and banning abortions, which doesn't make any sense. And we already know the premise to that is because white males are afraid of disappearing off the face of the earth. But yeah, the technology is there. And even if you don't know who the biological father is, I learned from true crime shows, so I'm sure the government already knows this if they're any kind of smart, which we know they're really not. But the bottom line is that they can actually do a genealogy and do a reverse genealogy to go backwards and see what, like, who this child's father would be. You can actually find that information and drill down that far to find out who the biological father is. And then once you find him, like they do with crimes, just do a DNA test, get a mouth swab, and furtherly confirm this is the father. And then look at his crazy stuff and interrogate him and wonder, why have you not been around? Why did we have to do the most to find you? Did you know this child was out here? And of course, he's probably going to say no. But whatever it is, it's time for you to start paying child support and taking care of your child. And then you're going to have to pay arrears for all them years that you was running off and having kids with different women. And that's going to definitely slow down males just running amok and doing whatever they want to do and being able to judge women. And it's also going to allow them to not have fucked up data where they pretend that, 20% of males and women, 80% of women are having all all these babies with 20% of males, which doesn't even make sense. That would mean that we literally are all related to each other, because that's a very small population of males for women to be supposedly having children with. How will we even have access to only 20% of the males in the entire country? That's ignorant as F, but are we surprised that these incels and manosphere red pillars are giving these talking points? Anything to make them look good, because what? Men lie. So let's continue. So they said the rate decline, the birth rate decline for the Black, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Asian women is largely driven by rising morbidity and mortality rates for women of color, which actually, I absolutely hate saying that term. So I would say that these rates for Black women, American Indian, Alaska Native women, and Asian women, which the last three are kind of like the same thing, but let's continue. So they said that is because of morbidity and mortality rates. Peggy Roberts, a board certified women's health nurse practitioner licensed in New York, tells Fortune. And that's like a whole nother issue. It's like, why should women keep having children if they can't get it together and allow women to have a healthy birth, labor and delivery, and healthy babies? And this also goes back to the government being goofy as hell and not just giving people universal health care. Like, again, the healthcare system is complete trash. I lived outside the country for 2 years in Belgium, and their healthcare system was universal. They had like the nicest hospitals, and you could literally, like, people were like living in the hospital. I mean, because it was just nice, and you didn't have to like be kicked out 2 days after giving birth to a human because the hospitals want their hospital bed back so they can make more money. So yeah, that's just something else. And when you invest in people do better for the country overall. And that's what people are too ignorant to even understand. So you'll see people who are in very poor health, yelling loudly and spewing that not my tax dollars. They don't want their tax dollars to go to, God forbid, Black people, because they're usually racist. But they don't want their universal health care because they don't want their tax dollars to go to people that I guess they don't like. And the interesting thing is that some of the highest rate of people who don't have healthcare coverage, who are on welfare, who have very poor health, are those same racist people who are saying they don't want their tax dollars to pay for everyone to have healthcare coverage, because they're basically afraid that people that they are feeling racist against are going to be healthy and I guess take over the country. I don't know where they're going with that, but the bottom line is it's like, end your hate and allow everyone to be healthy so that we can have a strong country. And if you don't like the country being diverse, then go back to your country, wherever you came from before you stole a whole landmass, or before you came over here to benefit off of what other people's ancestors built. You can go back to your country and go back to where people look like you. But for the rest of us who don't mind a diverse society, we can continue to live here and pay our taxes, whatever it's going to cost. And this universal health care will benefit everyone in the long run. And not even in the long run, and just immediately you will see the difference. You will see a healthier society. You will see healthcare costs should not be as expensive because people are going to be healthy. They'll be able to go to the hospital before things get extremely worse. And for people who are complaining about, oh, my taxes raising, look at how much you're paying right now for healthcare premiums. They are through the roof. I know when I was still working for corporate America, it was upwards of like $400 for like a family of 3. So I don't think your taxes are going to be $400 for everyone to be paying the taxes. And I'm pretty sure the government will be able to balance out the cost of healthcare, because at this point we all know everything is overpriced. The prescription drugs, the healthcare services, the doctors' salaries, bonuses for executives. The hospitals are really just ran like entire corporations. They're not there to just serve their patients. They're barely there to serve their patients. They're definitely there to look out for their interests and to make as much money and profit as they can. And that honestly should be illegal as well. You should not be able to make profit off of a human's health, that's giving slavery all over again. So people need to just be able to go to the hospital because they're not feeling well, get the services they need to get better, and keep it pushing and go so they can go to work and they can make more money for the country and be strong and just be a strong country overall and bring back, us manufacturing things and creating things and being intelligent and not being dumbed down because our country is putting us on drugs so that we don't really have a voice, so we can't think clearly and they can better control us. Like, this world is so upside down, it's not even funny. Like, the most common sense things that should be happening are not happening, and it's really quite embarrassing. It makes a lot of people just wish we could just go on to the next earth already because we're so over it. But so let me continue. So they said these trends instill a sense of apprehension among women regarding the risk linked with pregnancy and childbirth. She says, consequently, women are opting to forego the prospect of having children. So they go on to ask, why are fewer women having children? As if they didn't just explain it in the first few paragraphs. One, the country is too expensive. People are dying during childbirth. The government doesn't give a crap about families. Like, hello. So they said there are a number of factors affecting the declining birth rate, but personal finance and career choices continue to be top of mind for women in the years traditionally committed to having children. And I really don't blame these women because the males are not conditioned to be good husbands. For centuries, we've seen them abuse their power when they were the ones making the money. So women had to fight for rights to get better jobs, and we're still fighting to get the equal pay to what our male counterparts are making when we're doing the exact same job. And women just learned that money is power. So why wouldn't you be focusing on your career to make sure you're going to be making a good salary so you can take care of yourself at minimum, so you don't have to rely on a male. And then if you want to have children, that's even more important that you are making a great salary so that you can take care of your children as well, because they're depending on usually just the mom because the fathers right now are allowed to run amok. And so, of course, women that have any kind of sense will be focusing on those careers and making more money and living a good, comfortable life, because why shouldn't we? And of course, you're seeing this translate to there being a lot of single women that are owning homes over the single male counterparts, and women just being able to do really great, responsible financial things with this additional money that we're making now. So let me continue. So many women are delaying having children into their late 30s and 40s to get ahead in their career. That's especially true for some of the most successful women in business, including Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo. While Nooyi undoubtedly had an illustrious career, she always felt guilty about balancing the care of her two daughters and work. She told Fortune at the 2014 Aspen Ideas Festival, and hopefully that will go away soon, because why are males allowed to work and have children and they feel no guilt? They can work as much as they want. They can travel. They can do whatever they want to. And no one bats an eyelash. But mothers who need to work as well, because we also have bills, are looked at some type of way. We're judged and shamed. And y'all know how I feel about shame. Do not care about it. But a lot of women are judged and shamed because they have to work, or because they want to work, or because their jobs require them to work a lot if they want to move up the corporate ladder or make a certain amount of money. And it's like there's a cap for women. Guys can just be hungry and greedy and thirsty for all the things and all the money and all the material items, and just be completely materialistic. And women are told, okay, you just don't have any time for your children. You're just not going to stay at home with your child. Why did you even have kids? Blah, 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 blah. And you don't hear the same backlash for males as they're working around the clock, which means they're also usually cheating. So let's continue. So the biological clock and the career clock are in total conflict with each other, she said. Plus, women reach their peak earning years in their 40s, and the prime employment rate age for women continue to rise, according to a 2023 report from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. A woman's 30s and 40s are traditionally dedicated to career development, but that time frame also overlaps with when they're expected to have children, Nooyi said. Kids become teenagers as their mothers are promoted to middle management, and that's the time your husband becomes a teenager, she joked, and it's not funny. Can we please stop acting like husbands are children? They're not. You're not an additional child. You're grown ass. You are another grown up in the house. Act like it. So this goes back to boys will be boys and males getting this pass to act like 5-year-olds. You don't get to act like a child. So this is why another reason why a lot of women are just like, forget it. I will be a single mom before I raise someone else's grown-ass son. So plus, as children grow older, there's also the time a mother's aging parents need care too. We're screwed, she said. We cannot have it all. You may not be able to have it all. Speak for yourself, sis. No, I'm joking. I'm serious, though. More women are vocalizing their choice to remain childless to pursue higher education, said Roberts Plus. Women express concerns about the lack of available partners for forming long-term relationships and starting families. Exactly, because the males are just like they're not viable options. They're not marriage material. They're barely partner material, and they're usually not good parent material because no one's holding them accountable. So that's just another issue. The birth rate has also been affected by an increased awareness of contraception. Janet Choi, a board-certified reproductive endocrinologist and chief medical officer at fertility care provider Progeny, tells Fortune, more women now have access to contraception and use it. This can be especially said of long-acting reversible contraceptives in recent years, she says. Yeah, so this story is not telling us anything new. We're learning that women are still delaying having children, if they have children at all. And I blame the government, if we want to blame anybody, because they created this perfect storm of women just saying, screw it. I'm not going to have kids, or I'm going to delay it to when I can better financially support my child or children in me. And so women are able to finally put ourselves first and not look at ourselves as incubators and breeders that are just popping out these babies for men. It's like, no, I can want kids, but I'm going to have to make sure I can financially take care of these kids. And so that's what women are doing. And if they don't want kids because the factors aren't adding up, whether they just don't want to be a mom because they lack the maternal instinct or the maternal gene or whatever, or they just decide it's just not working. This country we're in is not conducive to child rearing, childbirth, and none of it. And I'm going to opt out. That is a choice that they get to have. And that's the government that is at fault here. So I don't expect the government to make any kind of good decisions anytime soon, because it seems to totally lack intelligence and making any kind of smart decisions for this country overall. So we will continue to see this birth rate decline. Let me know what you all think about this story. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you to all my subscribers. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.